In this video, I'm going to talk you through how to stitch the geranium kits. So first up, here's the piece you're going to be stitching. This is the geraniums. And you can see here we're using lazy daisies, French knots, we've got a stem stitch, and then we've got a split stitch with a little bit of running stitch for your title. So I'm going to talk you through it all, but we have separate videos on every single stitch to guide you through the way. So first up, what's in the kit? So firstly, you've got your fabric printed up with the design, and you've got a couple of needles in the fabric too. You've got a full stitch instruction booklet, and in this guide you'll find instructions on all the different stitches you have to use, as well as a few other stitches that appear in other parts of our range of Botanicals kits. You'll have a hoop and a hoop guide. You have a little card with a little bit of information about geraniums, and then your all-important stitch plan. Now on the back of the stitch plan, you've got a few close-up pictures, and these aren't just for looking aesthetic. These pictures are here to show you how certain areas should be stitched close up, so you can use these as a reference. On the other side, we've got instructions for what areas need to be stitched in what stitches. So for example, you can see all the stems here are stitched in stem stitch using colour number 1, the leaves in split stitch with 1 and 2, and then we've got our lazy daisies here with colours 3 and 4, and a final bit of French knots in colour number 5. Now those colours then all link up to the colours as they're numbered on the bobbin. So our green number 1, or our olive number 2, we've got the peach and the red, and then we've got our purple. So everything is coordinated to match. Now let's get stuck into some of this sewing. So first up, I'm just going to show you a little bit from the leaves. I'm going to take my hoop I'm going to mount my hoop here so I can show you both the leaves and some petals. I'm working here on a hoop stand, but you don't need to use a hoop stand. I'm just doing that for the video. So because we're doing the first bit in a stem stitch, that uses colour number 1. So I'm going to cut myself an arm's length of that colour. And with all the botanicals, you're going to split the threads down and you're going to work with 3 strands of thread. So I take my 3 strands and I wind the remaining ones back onto the bobbin. Going to thread these through the needle and tie a knot. So for a stem stitch, now remember we have a separate video showing you how to do a stem stitch, but if you want to just watch it here, all you do is you bring your needle up and you follow along the line, doing quite a long stitch to begin with, and then you bring your needle up halfway along it, like this. And then take your stitch forward again, so you're jumping past the end of your last stitch. I like to say 2 steps forward, and then we go 1 step back. So we go 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Stem stitch is a really nice place to start this design because it's a super simple stitch. 1 step back. One thing to bear in mind with all our Botanicals designs is the printing is screen printed onto the fabric. So when you do use your stitching, you want to make sure you're covering over the lines. These lines will not wash away when you finish. The lines will stay there. So as you stitch, you want to just cover them over. So you can see I'm going on with my stem stitch, and I'm going to go the whole way along. And that's as simple as a stem stitch is. You just are going to fill in all these lines with your stem stitch. Going 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Now do watch the separate video on it, but all you're going to end up doing is going the whole way along, and then you might come back to here and follow this line round. And you want to get to a point where you've then done all your lines here in this stem stitch. So whilst I've got the thread, let me just take you on to look at one of the leaves. So I'll just come back along this line and I'll just work round to get to the leaf. So I'm now at the leaf, and the leaves we're stitching in a split stitch. So you see we're using 2 colours here. So I'm just going to show you a segment of a leaf. But again, refer to your plan here. So you can see we're using colours 1 and 2. So I've got my number 1 already threaded up. Number 2 is here. So I'm just going to do a segment of this so you can see how it works. Basically, I'm doing it effectively to begin with. It's just going to look like a satin stitch. So I've got 2 different lines, an outer white line and then this inner one. The inner segment is what's going to be roughly and loosely filled with my olive green. So I'm just going to go round and just quite loosely, I'm filling in the outer edge of this shape in the dark green. I'll just keep going on this example here. Okay. I've got a segment there for you. And now let me just fill in a bit on the inside of there too, because I know that's using the dark green. Now you don't have to do it in this order, but whilst I'm threaded up, I just want to show you a little bit. And you see, I'm not keeping all my stitches going in a parallel direction. I'm actually working them in a round, so they all sort of come into the same centre. I'm being quite scruffy with how I'm choosing to put my stitches down. And at this point, I'm not going to worry too much about having gaps. These white lines are purely there for guides when it comes to these leaves. So there's enough of my dark green just to give you an idea. I'm going to go and just close off that thread. And then I'm going to get myself a length of the olive green. Again, I'm going to work with 3 strands. So I'm all threaded up with my strands, and now this is where I'm just going to blend in a circle of olive green. I'm going to bring my needle up in the middle of these satin stitches. So I'm splitting the satin stitches. And so I'm going to vary where I come up. I don't want this to look uniform. I want it to look sort of gradiated. And so you achieve that by having a real varying length of these stitches. So you see there how I've just started blending those colours together. And let me bring you back to the finished one. You can see here the exact same thing where they've blended in, so they're not being too uniform. That's what you want to achieve with it, okay? So that's how you're going to stitch your leaves. So let me, again, I'm just going to finish off that thread and then show you how to stitch up the flowers of your geranium. Now I apologise for the fact the light is slightly fading just as I'm stitching, and I started recording this video a little too late in the day, so I do apologise for that. Hopefully you can still clearly see everything, but it might just be that the colours are a little bit off. So now, when we get to our geraniums, we're going to make up our flower using Lazy Daisy stitch. And so what I want here, if I show you, is it's two different Lazy Daisies, an outer red one and then an inner one. So we start with the outers and then we go to the inners. Now, each of my Lazy Daisies has between 3, 4 or 5 petals. All I've done on the fabric is mark the dots because it's quite hard to control the shape. And so I've just marked you how many flowers to do, but you'll use your own initiative to place those flowers. And you've always got the pictures on the website to refer to if you want a really precise example. But what you're trying to do is just create the feeling of the geranium with those heads full of little flowers. So, just going to thread up my needle. Okay, so your Lazy Daisy is basically a variation on a chain stitch. And again, there is a separate video showing you this process. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this one, and I'm just going to start with a real simple 2-prong one. So, to do a Lazy Daisy, I effectively start as if I would a loop chain stitch. So I create myself a loop, and then away from the loop, I go up, you see, up in the middle, and I create a little stitch to catch my loop. So I've got my catching stitch. There we go. That's my first little Lazy Daisy. And the key thing here is you are controlling the look of the Lazy Daisy with your own tension. So if you pull too tight, your little chain will go too tight. So again, I want to kind of keep this nice and loose and round. So that's perfect. I secure it in place. I'm going to go again. I'm going to go over here now, and I'm going to do this one with a few more flowers on it. So I'm going to go for a 5-1. I'm going to bring it up here, and I'm just going down, and I'm going to create a 5th. So it's all with the Lazy Daisy, it's about just being really gentle, manipulating the strands into the shape you want them to be in. And then I can get you the inner ones added. So that's effectively what you're going to do, is you'll start with all your outer red first. So let me close off the thread. And on the back, I'm just going to secure it in the way I would always, just a few little securing stitches. Just getting my paler colour, my coral. And again, I'm taking 3 strands here. So I'm now going to repeat that exact process, but now I'm doing my little lazy daisy stitches on the inside. So rather than where I began before, right at the end, I'm just coming up slightly higher. And I'm going to do my first stitch. I'm catching it. So bring my needle up and I catch my stitch. Secure it in place. Again, it's just a matter of just take your time as you do it. Like a lot of sewing, it's never the sort of thing that's made neater or better by rushing. Just take it slowly. So I've got my second one. And again, I'm just having this going on the inside. Now you could do the outer one first and then your inside, but the danger is if you do your inside one first, you'll end up accidentally covering it over entirely with your outside one. Okay, then I secure this in place. And what's so effective is it's a really simple way of stitching, but it just, when you're using something like the geranium, which all the petals have a little bit of variation in colours, this enables you to achieve that because each time you do it, you'll end up having a little amount different showing of the red or the coral. Okay, so you've now got your petals in. I'm just going to, again, close that off on the back. And now we have the final step in creating this design, which is just simply adding a French knot in the middle of each one. So as you can see here on the plan, every single flower has a little French knot in the middle to just give it a bit of substance. So you're going to get your darkest purple. And again, you want to work with 3 strands. So I'm going to bring my needle up for my French knot. Now there is a separate video on French knots and I really recommend you watch that. I'm here going to do a triple wrap for my French knot. There we go. And a French knot just goes into the middle. You do want to do this step after you've done the petals. That's it. Your French knots are in with the triple wrap and I finish off on the back. So that's all the steps. We covered off our stem stitch, our split stitch, our lace daisy and our French knots. And here is what your finished design is going to look like. I love making this kit. I love stitching it. It's really good fun. And so I hope you enjoy.